Welcome everyone back to the second round of the Grand Tournament of the Old World, as we've got the forces of Tzeentch going up against the forces of the Vampire Counts, led by Isabella Von Carstein. I'll take it over from here, mainly for the throat. We've got, yes, Vilitch the Curseling, who's going to be leading the forces of Tzeentch here in this one. He's got everything from Flamers, Chaos Warriors, Chaos Spawn, we've got Marauders, Zangors, Cockatrice. We've got a lot of the more recent units that were added to the Tzeentchian lineup, going up against a vast, shambling horde of the undead, led by Isabella Von Carstein. A force that is so large that we couldn't actually scry the entire army on screen here. This was the best angle that we could get, just to encompass just how massive an army is. The numbers disparity is definitely going to be a key factor here. Can Vilitch overcome such an overwhelming horde of the undead? That's what we're going to be here to see. And whether his mastery of magic, granted to him by Tzeentch, is going to overcome just the sheer weight of the undead horde. Well, let's get this battle underway as the vast horde of the undead stream forward there. They're facing Vilitch's forces of Tzeentch, slowly moving across the field. We can see now they're already getting into position here. That lake there, or very large puddle, is going to be a bit of a natural barrier for some of the units. We can see that Tzeentch are probably going to be looking to use a lot of its magic to cause a lot of early damage here, so we'll be looking for that first spell to be flung. We can see some of the Norscan tribal warriors there moving in on the right flank of the Tzeentch forces. We've got some of the pink horrors at the back. That's going to be important as their ranged attacks are going to be a very, very key element there for the Tzeentchian forces, because obviously the Vampire Counts don't have any ranged units at all, as the first spells are being exchanged here by both sides. We can see though that there's just so many undead that it's really going to come down to good positioning and smart use of those magical abilities by the Tzeentch forces, as we can see now that the centre line is starting to come together. We've got that left flank of the undead, the Blood Knights just smashing in there. There's not many of those Norscan warriors left, that's for sure. I don't know how much longer they'll be able to hold on after such a powerful hit, but those Blood Knights are some of the most powerful cavalry in the game. So we can see now that the centre line has been met. We can see the Cockatrice is getting involved. And it looks like we've got both Vilitch and Isabella Von Carstein getting involved in that fight. The right flank is looking like that's going to be quite a slobber knocker, to say the least, as there's a lot of forces involved there. We can see there now in that sort of pool area there, there's a lot of... We've got some of the ghosts, we've got some of the elite Tzeentchian infantry there, some of the Chaos Warriors with halberds getting involved. The Mortis engine also getting quite close to the combat there, which is interesting, because I didn't think that would be a unit that they would want to commit to this kind of conflict. As we sweep over with that, the centre line is a little bit in flux at the moment. It's difficult to see exactly what's going on. We see some spells being cast there, no blast of Tzeentchian magics going across there. That's probably caused quite a bit of damage. You can see the Cockatrice there getting involved. There's one of the, I believe it's the White Lord, supporting Isabella there, a hero fighting a large monster, quite classic. We can see going back over now to the left flank of the Tzeentch, right flank of the undead, that huge battle going on down there, as we can see the Chaos Chariots have smashed their way through, causing a bit of havoc in the rear line. It's a bit all over the place. Compared to the first round with the Empire and Skaven, it's a little bit more spongy, as there are holes being made, and then it's being patched up as units are sort of retreating and coming back in. Obviously the undead have the advantage that their units don't retreat, but they do, however, start to crumble, which has caused casualties over time. The Tzeentch forces have the unique ability to protect themselves via a magical shield, which will also recharge if they're out of battle for a few seconds. So both sides have their own unique mechanics that can keep them going, and obviously this undead force is quite large by comparison to the Tzeentch forces, but again they have a much higher level of combat aptitude and the spells available to them. Not that Isabella a slouch where it comes to the spell casting, of course. Vampire Counts do have access to some pretty nifty spells, so she's probably in the middle of this has cast quite a few of her own, probably to patch up some of her own zombies being killed, or getting some of the skeletons back up into the fight. But we can see now there's been a lot of casualties caused. That entire left flank of the undead forces has just been completely dominant in the battle there after those Blood Knights were involved. Though the Blood Knights themselves have been fighting some of the Disc Warriors of Tzeentch. That's obviously caused casualties on both sides. The Cockatrice is on the move. That is nearly dead, and it is fleeing the field as the centre now has been... Yep, that has been claimed. Isabella's forces quite comfortably in charge. This is looking more and more like a vampire count's victory here in the Grand Tournament of the Old World, as we can see that there isn't a lot of blue left on the field, but there's definitely plenty of blood red as we go over to what's arguably been the most important area of the fight, the right flank there. It's tied up so many elite units of Vilitch's forces, and I'm not quite sure whether it was a smart decision there. We can see that there's still some of the undead forces trying to hold that area just to keep them pinned, and that's going to allow the rest of Isabella's forces to probably sweep in, as those Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch with those halberds are a formidable foe. We can see lots of zombies. We can see some of the Grave Guard getting involved in that fight. That's only been there for quite a while. You can see the chariots there sweeping around in the background as they just smash right in to the forces there. As we tried our best with the picture-in-picture or scry and scry to make sure that it was covered as best as we could. It was a battle that was all over the place. It was quite an entertaining one, but I got a feeling here that Jeff the ref is going to call this one fairly soon, to be honest, as we are going to see both of these factions wrapping this one up now. We can see that we've got, I believe that's Hellbrass there, the hero of Vilitch's force. He's not got much left in him at this point. He's going to start to flee. I believe Vilitch, if he hasn't already fled, is probably going to be on the verge of that. We've also got that undead dragon smashing into the forces, and it's going to be fairly one and done there as we go over to the post-battle stat. And here we have the results from a pretty intense battle. As we can see here from the breakdown, the numbers definitely are very, very lopsided. The vampire counts under Isabella, they're bringing 1,428 of the shambling horde, losing 800 in the process with 628 remaining, with Vilitch bringing 677 loyal followers of Tzeentch, losing 536 of his combined horde of demons and warriors, and only having 141. But how does this all break down? Isabella herself only got 3 kills during the battle. However, she was instrumental in keeping that centre line intact, and also risked everything to ensure victory. Despite the fact she very nearly died, she didn't manage to heal herself up and remain the focal point at the middle of her force. Her White King also didn't do a hell of a lot in terms of kills on the battlefield, but was instrumental in holding up some of the tougher units. Her zombies did exactly what they're there to do, which is absorb impact, take losses, and not do much else. The fact that they even got 7 kills is pretty impressive in and of itself. Losing an entire unit of Skeleton Warriors isn't bad, and her Skeleton Spearmen didn't do particularly well in terms of kills, but again, these are cheap throwaway units. 6 in the lineup that are large, and they're there just to absorb hits, and do a little bit of damage themselves. The Ghouls, on the other hand, 2 of the units not particularly great, 17 and 13, but one of them did get 55 kills, which in terms of a 677 force is pretty significant number of kills. The 2 real standout infantry units, though, were the Graveguard over on that right flank of Isabella, who held the line in that swamp, between them getting over 120 kills with 50 and 79 respectively, doing a hell of a lot of damage and holding up some of the key units there of Vilitch's force. The Graveguard with great weapons did less in terms of damage, but also added to the overall sort of chaos and holding that line. The Blood Knights got 85, running rampant and doing over 10,000 damage and 85 kills. An impressive score, but not surprising because Blood Knights are a very powerful force. Down in the monster kind of side of things, the Crypt Horrors didn't do particularly well, and as we noticed on that right flank, were almost kind of sacrificed, but ultimately they ended up holding that right flank and holding up some of those key forces. The Terrorgeist we could see was in the middle of the fight the entire time, was laying into Vilitch, which explains a lot of the, the lower damage that it overall had and number of kills, but again, its high hit point pool meant that it could stay there in the fight and hold everything up. Ultimately, the Mortis engine was focused down early on with a lot of spells being cast at it, but it did its job. It buffed the nearby friendly units long enough to be able to achieve victory. The Hex Wraiths, a unit that I personally quite like, didn't do much in the battle and were killed off fairly quickly, and the Black Knights with Lancers and Barding, they were just there, ultimately. Onto the losers' side, though, we do have a bit of a mixed bag. Vilitch himself was in the middle of the fighting and got 23, which compared to Isabella is a much higher number. Acold Hellbrass did what he could with 50 kills in total, and he was there right up until the very end, managing to survive the battle. The Cultist of Tzeentch is a spellcaster, so we're not expecting particularly high numbers there in terms of kills, but his damage dealt was also particularly low, 644. Not great. Marauders of Tzeentch, again, mixed results. One unit we did see get very quickly burnt down and they had to flee the field, thus they only got 6 kills. One of them got 55 and the other got 47, which is pretty good for a standard frontline unit. The newly introduced Zangors did a pretty good job at 78, doing over 6,000 damage, while the Forsaken of Tzeentch got 75 and were involved in that very, very nasty fighting on the Tzeentchian left flank. The Chosen of Tzeentch with halberds were the standout force in this army, with 155 kills amongst them and over 13,000 damage, and ultimately, if they'd been in the centre line of the fight, probably would have been the killers there, and probably would have been the ones to get Isabella and end the fight very quickly. It's lucky that they ended up on that flank. The Pink Horrors were the ranged unit for the force, and didn't get to do a hell of a lot before they were tied up into the melee, which isn't surprising given that there was pretty much double their number against them in the form of the shambling undead. They didn't really have time to be able to sit there and fling their magical projectiles. The Chariots of Tzeentch did manage to punch her at one point and cause a fair amount of damage, and they were instrumental in taking out things like the Hex Wraiths and such. Not too bad overall with 45, and the same can be said for the Doom Knights, which got the same number of kills. Both units that are very good at being able to do hit and run attacks, but when there's so many bodies on the field that they have to kind of crunch through, it's difficult and they get tied up in combat. The Screamers of Tzeentch were there for quite a while, and again, this is another weak kind of flying unit that's good at harassment, but they stuck there for most of the fight and got 33 kills. The Cockatrice was a little bit of a letdown, was in the middle and was ultimately doing a lot of the fighting against Isabella. It had the chance of being able to pip the post and get the victory for Vilitch, but ultimately it never happened. The Flamers of Tzeentch didn't do a hell of a lot, despite the fact that potentially they could have caused a lot of damage with their flamethrowers, but ultimately did very little. 3 kills and 479 damage. It's actually a big letdown for the force. While the Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch was at least there, pumping out flame damage to single targets for a good chunk of the battle. The Spawn of Tzeentch, which are a unit that generally should have done a lot more than they actually did, got killed off on that left flank battle, or the right flank, for Isabella, and yeah, ultimately didn't end up contributing that much to the fight. The fact that they didn't flee was obviously a good part, but they really should have been able to punch through. And then finally the Chaos Furies, which did get 57, but as far as I remember, these were attacking zombies and the such, so most of their damage was largely on fodder units. But there's the breakdown. For me, my top picks were definitely the Graveguard and the battle between them and the Chosen of Tzeentch with halberds. Great grinding battle on that flank, lots of death on both sides. It was a pretty sharp, brutal battle, and definitely want to be interested to see how Isabella takes her next force into round 3. But thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this slightly bigger breakdown at the end, as I know some people requested that, and we'll see what the next battle brings. But until then, have a good one all. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.